So welcome to another edition of the Deals for Dentists podcast. Today we have Jonathan Martin. He's the VP Business Development of Ceterus, and he's from Charleston, South Carolina. And Ceterus is an automated accounting platform and reporting platform. It's dental specific and cloud-based. And you can go to dealsfordentist.com and find the Ceterus promo. So if you introduce Ceterus to your CPA, they'll pay you $100. Right? That's awesome. Who doesn't want $100?
I mean, I just want a one sentence email will work.
Okay, so that's how they can get in touch. You just hook up a email or a text or
whatever is easiest. If they want to click, I think if they click through your link on your website, it takes them to a form where they can go, book time or book a demo or schedule a demo on our website. And as soon as they submit that, I'll have their info, and then I reach out directly.
Okay, awesome. So mention Deals for Dentists and encourage your accountant or CPA to visit Ceterus to learn more and get $100. That's awesome. So basically, you feel like once you get that introduction with their CPA and accountant, that you'll be able to take it from there and discuss the benefits of your software.
For sure.
And I wanted to start with some really hard-hitting journalism here, okay? So my first question is, what is the difference between an accountant and a CPA? And I'm asking, of course I know, I'm just asking for a friend who doesn't know, but...
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. So whenever we work with a CPA firm, so let's take a kind of the perfect example in this scenario that would be somebody that would hear of us through you, right? They're a dentist. They don't have time to do their accounting. So most of the time they've engaged a CPA firm to handle their books. Sometimes that's monthly, sometimes it's quarterly, sometimes they don't even know what's going on until the end of the year when it's tax time, right? We kind of see the gambit. But within the firm, you've got the CPA, right? There's the practicing partner, the managing partner that's always a CPA. And you might even have the accountants, quote unquote, that could also be CPAs. But most of the time, the people doing your books and preparing your P&Ls and your balance sheets are not CPAs. They're just accountants that have had accounting experience. Like I, for one, have degrees in accounting, but I'm not a CPA. I never sat for the CPA exam. But I did, accounting and bookkeeping myself at our firm for years and years before I shifted over to focusing on sales. So when I like to not necessarily use them interchangeably, even though within the firm they can be. So I hope that's a little bit of clarity.
So essentially, you're an accountant, but to become a CPA, there's a specific exam you need to pass to get that CPA credential.
And you certainly want that person giving you tax advice and the person who's preparing your tax returns and all of that. And you don't need a CPA sitting there doing data entry. That's actually what our platform is designed to do and make more efficient. Our whole goal, because the way we see this happening is we see CPAs moving their bookkeepers and accountants towards higher value work. Meaning, John Smith, accountant, comes into work on a Monday morning. Instead of him sitting there doing coding and pushing in transactions and making sure it's sitting in the right general ledger account on the financials, firms are now starting to want John to get on the phone with the client, and get John on the phone to go over the profit and loss statement and cash flow and explain to the client why there was a spike in lab costs last month versus, him just fielding questions about his balance sheet every week and a half from the dentist who happened to look at his financials. So we just see a massive shift in the skill set and what the labor at the firms are actually going to be doing and are already doing.
Now, do you work with and do you recommend dental specialist CPAs that specialize in dentistry or focus in dentistry, or does your software help all CPAs? And do you recommend that dentists get a dental specific CPA?
100%. I don't think as an entrepreneur or business owner, you want a CPA that has, maybe they have 100 clients and maybe 2 of them are dentists. They're just not going to be able to give you that industry focus and that industry knowledge that a CPA firm does that actually exclusively, or at least have a large portfolio of dentists as clients. There's just things inherent in a dental practice that requires that knowledge from a CPA that just does them over and over again, that can help them track variances and trend analysis, like my lab cost should be between 6 and 8%, or what am I spending on my staff as a percentage of sales? A CPA that just might take on a dentist and it's maybe their first one, they're just not going to be focused on that kind of stuff because they're just not used to it. So having an industry focused firm is huge, and we see that happening like across the country. I mean, that's the way it's moving.
Yeah, and dentistry, and you could probably answer this better, that I feel like it's such another animal than some of the other health professions. There's so much that goes into running a dental office, from equipment to marketing to staff, overhead, insurance write-offs, and it can be very easy to lose track of your numbers and your data. So having a dental specific CPA, I think is crucial. When I first got out of school, I just had my dad's accountant, and I think he had a few dentists and doctors, but so I was an associate at the time, and then when I started to get more into my career and becoming a partner, that's when I hired a more specific dental CPA that specializes in dentistry. So I'm not just, a pretty face here. I actually did some research. Ceterus is Latin for the rest or everything else, like etc. Is that right?
That's right. When my CEO founded the company, we kind of started selling, because I met soon after that. I've been here for 10 plus years now. And our mantra for a long time was, you do business and we'll do the rest. We don't want the entrepreneur to have to be obsessed or have to be focused on sitting there doing data entry. And the same applies to CPA firms, right? We want the CPA firm to do what they do well, which is to provide that advisory level service, not spending billable time doing data entry. And so it still applies. So the name is still right on par with what we're doing. So,
do you get asked that every time you get a new client?
Every time. And you actually pronounced it correctly, which I'm impressed. Most people do not.
Nice.
So I find that, on Deals for Dentists, your company is very niche, because you're not really selling to dentists. You're just trying to get that introduction to their CPA so that you can introduce yourself to the CPA and make their CPA be more efficient, and it's win-win-win, because it helps the dentist, it helps the CPA firm, and ultimately it's hopefully gonna free up a lot of time, because a lot of your software has created this automation to help that CPA firm do less data entry and can be more like a consultant type of CPA than just crunching numbers. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. And I absolutely would encourage your dentists themselves to also reach out to me, like I mentioned, and I'd love to show them what we're doing, because when the actual end user sees what we're doing, I haven't had one not introduce me to their CPA right away, because when they see the visibility and what we're breaking down for them, the days of getting an email with a PDF of your financials on it, and that's all you hear from your CPA, those days are going away very quickly.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to, empower that dentist with real-time reporting, giving them daily updated cash flow forecasting so they can actually predict where their cash balances should be. Did they break even this month? What was their break even point? Right. Or even something like, I would almost imagine if you asked a dentist, 9 times out of 10, do you know exactly what your owner's profit, like your profit to you as an owner, was last month versus the month before versus the year before? Most of them don't know, because all they're focused on is, I've got money in the bank. I know the practice is spitting out cash, which is great. And usually that's kind of where they stop. And I get it. I get why that's kind of where historically it's stopped, right? So what we're doing is saying, hey, look, let us take it a step further. And moreover, for the CPA firm, they're able to then show their clients some really cool stuff that they probably aren't doing now, right? Being able to show them, hey, let's get on a call and go over your cash flow statement. and let's talk about that. Let's see what we can do to bring down your lab fees. What can we do to bump up your, your reimbursements, whatever it might be, instead of just that classic old school, here's an email with a PDF, call me if you have questions, right? So
Yeah.
the CPA firms are, they love it because they don't have to do the work to compile that data. They're just getting it from our platform. And that's, I think, what's been so impactful.
So that gives them more time to actually help the dentist with, really, digging into what's going on in the practice, and especially now in COVID. It's so important to know your numbers, and like in my practice, our wages are the same. We didn't drop any staff wages. We brought all our staff back except for one assistant who didn't return because of some family health issues. So everyone came back. Our wages are the same. We're seeing less. We're about 80 to 85% of what we were, but we're full. We're at 100% capacity, but it's about 80 to 85% of what we were. So our costs are up, our overhead's up, our chair time is down. So it's so important now more than ever to know your numbers. And now I'm a sucker for a good dashboard, like a nice clean dashboard. Do you have a dashboard where I can go on my phone and see those breakdowns?
Yes, we have a dental specific reporting tool for the dentist. We have both. So let me take a step back. We have a back-end platform that the CPA firms use, which is incredibly efficient for them. The accountants, to your question earlier about accountants versus CPAs, the people working on the accounts that we service have doubled their capacity. Most of the time, they get to that point where they can handle twice as many dentists, which obviously makes the firm very efficient. Mm-hmm. But on the dashboarding to the client, they're getting stuff, on the third or the fourth or the fifth of the month, showing them things like, how does their overhead compare to the industry low, industry high? And a lot of that data is informed by our CPA firm partners. So our CPA firms will say, we try to track wages between this percentage and this percentage. And we show the dentist where they stack up. Are they spending too much on wages compared to their peers? Mm-hmm. So it's really powerful stuff out. On top of, they're also just the normal financial statements that they're getting within the platform too, but they can look at benchmarking across their peers on an income statement level, which is really powerful.
Now, can you break it down to find out break-even points and if we were profitable, like even per day?
So right now it's the prior month, and
Okay.
How does that compare to the prior quarter and prior year and your
Mm-hmm.
peers as well? We are looking at some different reporting mechanisms to integrate with that can actually, because the problem, and you're probably well aware of this as a dental guy and as a dentist, but the issue with the systems at the practice level is most of them you can't tap into remotely or in the cloud. They're based on site, and so you rely on the manager or the admin person to send the sales reports and kind of the daily reports out of the system, and that just becomes way too onerous for the firm. But we are talking to a couple groups that have some platforms that already integrate with the big boys in the space in terms of the practice management systems. So we are moving towards being able to update daily metrics from the firm. We'll certainly have that done very soon. Okay.
Now, is your software, is it called Ceterus, or is it Ceterus Edge?
Ceterus Edge, that's right.
Okay.
That's what the client. That's the end user software. That's what we named it.
So the CPA gets Ceterus Edge, and so the dentist actually gets a different software that's more designed just for the dentist. Is that right?
Yeah. So the dentist, he or herself, actually get access to just a really easy to navigate dental dashboard specifically. Mm-hmm. The CPAs have a much more elaborate back-end platform that does way more than what the dentist is actually getting, but it's only because we're making the actual bookkeeping work more efficient for the CPA firm.
Okay. Now, does this help me if my CPA firm ends up getting Ceterus Edge? Can I set budgets for the month, the quarter, the year, see my cash flow, see if we're profitable, see if we weren't profitable? That's all in that dashboard?
Yeah, it tracks profitability, month in, month out, your owner's profit versus the practice profit. How does that compare to other dental practices within the CPA firm as well? So, we've got a firm, for example, that they have 500 dentists that all they do is accounting and tax work for these 500 dental practices. And so they have all their clients on our platform. And what's really nice is their clients can log in and see all of these things that the dentist or the CPA, excuse me, used to have to compile and send to them in a PDF. And so it's just a really, they see daily updated cash flow forecasting. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, our platform knows when's payroll going to hit. It knows when that loan payment's getting made. It knows when, this expense or that expense is going to hit the bank, insurance premiums, things like that. And so it takes that into consideration on a daily basis, which is really nice. So the dentist really feels like they have a handle on cash flow.
Now, is this so the version that the dentist gets? Is this considered a replacement for like QuickBooks, or do you still use QuickBooks? How does that work?
At the moment, we do use QuickBooks Online in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And that's specifically just for a couple of nuanced things that we do on the back end for the CPA firms. And it's only really because CPAs across the country just inherently trust Intuit products, have for decades. And so we'd like to make the firms feel a little bit more comfortable with the fact that they're on a product that they can trust. They know it's got, high level security and it's hosted in the cloud. Intuit's obviously a very behemoth sized company. And so their products are very, very well secured. So when we come to a firm and say, hey, we're just going to keep using your QuickBooks Online account, but we're just going to leverage our software to do it a lot more efficiently, that's usually a pretty easy sell compared to me saying, hey, you've got to switch your general ledger completely and get a whole new general ledger.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's just kind of there in the background. And then, of course, if the client decides to leave, if your dentist, for example, leaves the CPA
Right.
firm, they can take the file with them and go, and they don't lose any of that data.
What about on the dentist side? So we have a bookkeeper that comes in once a week and does all our books. Would the Ceterus Edge for the dental version of it, would that replace QuickBooks, or we would still use QuickBooks in integration with the Ceterus software?
So QuickBooks Online would not go away. In this circumstance, we would just replace the work that bookkeeper is doing.
Okay.
Because what we're doing on a daily basis, we're pushing in transactions and coding them from the bank and the credit card and, payroll provider, booking payroll entries. Our software just does that automatically. So it's just pushing all that in using a very elaborate rules engine that we've built. So if a new teeth whitening vendor pops up at a firm, we've got over 1,000 dentists on the platform right now as we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a new teeth whitening vendor that pops up at one of our firms, our software makes it so that new vendor will be associated with a particular account on the financials. So then going forward, every one of the other 999 firms, it'll default to that account unless the CPAs tell us otherwise. So there's an enormous amount of efficiency gained from tracking vendors, tracking very unique transactions that might be specific to you or specific to the firm you're working in. And so the QuickBooks Online account still stays there. But again, it just makes it unnecessary for you to have somebody coming in there and doing data entry.
Now, and did you say, do you have is it a mobile app, or is it just a mobile responsive site that I can look at, and check out my, cash flow or reports and data from the previous month just right on my phone?
Absolutely. We have a native app, and then we also have an app that's responsive. If you just check it out, if you just go to the website through the browser as well. But yeah, we have a specific app for the reporting piece for the client.
Now, do you have I feel like accountants are such they're like such trusted advisors for business owners or dentists. They're like the consigliere of the dentist. So, and it's kind of like an intimate partnership where they know all about your finances. They're like a financial therapist. They know all about you. And I asked them for a lot of recommendations on, things like consultants and financial advisors and banking and credit cards. So having that CPA that you trust is so important. Now, do you have a connection with do you have like a Rolodex of CPAs that specialize in dentistry in case someone doesn't have one?
Yes, absolutely. If your listeners and followers reach out to us, we have a number of them that we can introduce them to, and they can vet and decide which one they might feel more comfortable with. But and back to your original question, the firms that we partner with are dental specific firms, and that's what they know, and that's what they do day in and day out. So any one of our, there's a handful of my go-to firms that I'll obviously refer a dentist to, just primarily because of the good relationship we have with them. So yeah, feel free. I mean, your dentists are welcome to reach out, and I can connect them with the right person.
And are these regional or are they national? Can you get a CPA in a different state?
Absolutely. Yeah. If somebody's in North Carolina and they want a North Carolina firm, I can introduce them. And if they're in California and they really want a California firm, that's fine too.
And your goal really is you're not competitive with CPAs. You're more complementary, and you're not there to replace the accountant. You're just there to help them and free up their time to become more of like an advisory role. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I get asked that all the time because when the CPAs first take a look at what we're doing, there is that initial kind of fear or hesitation of, oh, what if this guy poaches our dentist? But we do not sell directly to the dentist as the service provider. We're simply in the background for the CPA firms doing what we do really well. Now, obviously, the dentists want what we have, but that's exactly right. We want the CPA at the firms to be able to do that advisory work, because that's where, and we're doing thought leadership right now on LinkedIn about this, and we're promoting blogs about the fact that consultation and advisory is only becoming more important. And with what we offer through Ceterus Edge, we're able to give the firms that solution so they can do that. So they can actually start spending more of their time doing advisory work and giving you what you need as an entrepreneur, as opposed to, you having this little sliver of time you get with that CPA every month or every quarter to talk about your numbers.
Yep. So I feel like nowadays whenever I ask a question, I have to have two follow-up questions. One is, and I want to kind of go back to where you said you can compare industry standards. How has COVID changed that? And are practices just all over the place with how they were and how they are now as far as comparison, from previous quarters or previous years?
Yeah, it's been a little, obviously the sort of, let's just call it the beginning of April through June-ish, it was really tough, and we saw a huge drop off in revenue, obviously, and even in the states where they couldn't actually open, that was tough. But to your point earlier, I mean, like even regarding your practice, I mean, we're pretty much seeing almost back to normalcy in terms of top line, but again, for like you mentioned, it's a balancing act between how many chairs can I use, how many people do I need to bring in this week. Everybody's just trying to figure it out, but we're obviously we're very bullish on the way things are going in the space. So we're continuing. We see our CPA firms continuing to add clients, which is very very optimistic and confirming that we're moving in the right direction in terms of the space. So
that's a good sign. So, and the other follow-up question I have to ask is, whenever I ask a question, is how do the owner operator, like the solo practitioner or someone that maybe has a multi-specialty practice, compare to the DSOs? And do you provide your software to CPAs that represent DSOs as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's an interesting space in the DSO niche, because depending on the size, they might have an internal team and they don't actually have a firm that they're using. But then sometimes they do. We have several firms that support DSOs that aren't, maybe for just tax compliance, but also maybe for monthly accounting services. So we kind of are all over the place in terms of the different groups we support. But yeah, like I said, DSOs kind of operate like a private equity group at times, where they just have their own internal teams for that kind of stuff. But we can also be really supportive in that regard. So if a DSO has 30 practices that they own and they're managing, we're a great fit for that from a just automation and back end accounting platform as well. So they're definitely not mutually exclusive, that's for sure.
So do you find that, DSOs are, like you said, they're like a private equity group where they really are in tune with the margins and numbers. And I almost feel like they, you may be able to answer this better. they'll look at the numbers and margins first, and then open up the location where a private solo practitioner will open up the practice, and then look into the numbers and margins. So DSOs kind of have that that background. And I think I heard you once say the word dentalpreneur. Dentalpreneur is it's a great dental entrepreneur. Dentalpreneur is like me. I'm just a dentist trying to make it. I have a multi-specialty practice. We have 9 operatories, and it's I'm in it's a suburb of Boston. So it's a community. It's all about the town and being part of the community, and but it's very different than a DSO that has hundreds of offices. So how do you what do you see out there comparing like the mom and pop dental office versus the DSO?
From just a growth perspective, I've definitely seen an uptick in roll-ups whereby a DSO starts buying up practices. I actually have a very close friend of mine that started out with a practice that his wife was the main dentist at, and they've since grown from 1 to I think they have 12 practices now. Mm-hmm. And they've got a very great model where they go in and take an existing dentist who might be looking at retiring soon, and they bring in a younger dentist, and the current dentist that might be moving he or her way out, kind of trains and mentors that dentist for a year or 2. And then ultimately the younger dentist, or the, less experienced dentist rather, doesn't, they kind of take over the day-to-day, and then there's the exiting dentist who goes to do whatever he wants to do. But yeah, the DSOs are gobbling them up. At least before COVID, they were, you could Google the top 10 DSOs, and they're growing like crazy.
Has that changed because of COVID? Are they still growing?
I would say the overall acquisition market slowed way down. It came to a screeching halt in March, April, May.
Sure.
June, when people, places started opening back up a little bit, you started to see a little bit more discussions being had again. We deal with a lot of private equity guys just from our day-to-day work, and they're starting to, they have a lot of capital to deploy. So there's a lot of offers being made at this point now that they can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, the proverbial revenue tunnel. So.
What do you got going on back there? Some bitters, maybe some scotch. What's back there next to that plant?
Some tequila back there. Got a little bourbon and
nice.
Some bitters. Yeah, man. Yeah. I got the full gamut there.
I need to swing by next time I'm in Charleston.
Actually,
my babysitter, he was a freshman at the College of Charleston, but he's doing it remote here in Massachusetts.
I think they just started back either this week or next week. I think they're doing like a hybrid in-person type deal.
Yeah. So are you right downtown in Charleston? Is that where you live and where the headquarters is?
Yeah, our office is in the downtown area. Yep.
And you said
we're not quite as far down as the College of Charleston, but we're kind of we're on the main peninsula of Charleston.
Yep. I used to I went to college in New Orleans at Tulane, so on my drive down from Massachusetts to New Orleans, it would take me 2 or 3 days, and I would always stop in Charleston. I had a friend who lived there, and in a couple other places on the way down, maybe DC and somewhere in Virginia, but Charleston was one of the nicest towns that I've been to.
Yeah, I bet I'm not sure you'd even recognize it if it's been a while since you've been here, because the downtown is the growth of and building commercial and even apartment buildings and hotels. It's out of control. It's wild.
It's just booming.
Just booming. Yeah. Despite all of this, it's actually construction hasn't stopped. It's pretty wild to watch.
So what really frustrates me in dentistry is that we don't have a specific chart of accounts or a COA. And the ADA doesn't even recommend one. Actually, I'm just kidding. I don't even know what that means. But can you explain that? Because I've heard that in one of your previous interviews.
Yeah. So the COA stands for the Chart of Accounts. And that's just a fancy way of saying, how your profit and loss or your income statement's laid out and how your balance sheet is laid out. So in other words, you as a dentist might really like to see your owner expense in a certain place, or your owner draw rather, that you might take out on a weekly, monthly basis, whatever it is. You might like to see lab costs in a specific spot. You might like to see categorization of different expenses in a different way than another dentist might. And so the reason that there's suggested COAs, but obviously you can't mandate one across the country, but CPA firms typically have one that they like to use for their clients specifically. And frankly, the best value add a CPA firm can really do is have a consistent one for all of their clients because of benchmarking. You can't really have a different layout of your financial statements than the next guy, but then be able to tell your client, oh, well, you're doing this well compared to everybody else we have as clients. If there's not consistency, it's kind of like a different language. If you've got one P&L structured one way and another one structured another, they're not comparable. You just can't have them. You can't really put them side by side and say apples to apples, you're doing better than this guy.
Yep. You need that. You need to have those benchmarks so you can compare to see where you stand.
Absolutely. And firms have different ones. I mean, our 1,000 dentists across, I don't even know, 11 or 12 firms at this point, they all have a little unique twist maybe to how they lay it out, but they're very consistent across all of their clients with that little unique layout. And that's key. That's super critical.
Now, has COVID really taught us that how much cash is king and how important having good cash flow and we're having reserve cash is just so important. Have you found that has really made dentists start to reserve their cash more?
We have, and more importantly, now that with all the refinancing going on across the board, the banks really want to see a higher reserve threshold than they probably did prior, just for the sake of liability, right? If the bank's going to lend or refi, they want to make sure you got enough cash reserves to maybe handle another COVID, close if you had to close for a month out of left field because we see a huge spike or for whatever reason. So yeah, it's more important than ever to have solid cash flow, but then to also have solid reserves for the practice. Absolutely.
Now, does your software? Can I go on and see my statement of cash flow? And that's very different than a P&L, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a cash flow projection that we've built alongside the P&L, it pulls in your daily bank balance, and then based on your bank balance and then based on historical trends. So we pull in data for the last 13 months. And so this algorithm that we've built, it knows the forecasted revenue and the forecasted expenses at any given time for the next week, the next month, whatever it might be, based on historical, data from your actual practice. But then we also pull in things that we happen to know about that practice within the firm, right? If the firm is showing a trend in a certain direction, that takes that into consideration, and seasonality and all kinds of things like that. So when you're logging in and looking at our software, you always know what your bank balance is that morning, but then you can also look every single day and see what it should be in 30 days from now.
So, have you noticed? Has there been a trend that actually some dental offices went bankrupt because of the lack of cash?
I can't really speak to the bankruptcy percentage. I'd be ahead of my skis if I did. But what I can say is our firms have not lost any material number of clients. We're only seeing them add clients at this point. So I think a lot of firms were able to, a lot of practices were able to get some of the PPP money and the EIDL money, and hopefully that was able to sustain them kind of through the storm. But yeah, I haven't really heard much. I'm sure some practices probably had to close across the country. I have no doubt that happened. I don't think a ton of them had to. I just think it was just a tough few months for sure.
Yeah. Dentistry is one of those rare professions where you can actually open up and have a very successful business without having any business knowledge at all. I think I had 1 hour of business lecture in 4 years of dental school. So it's just, it just shows how important it is to know your numbers. So it sounds like your software can help the CPA give the dentist some more guidance on, have more time to be able to give more guidance on how to become more efficient and profitable, and definitely be ready if there is another shutdown, which who knows, there could be.
Yeah, and even COVID aside, what's really nice about the software is the dentist has the ability to log in and just download whatever they need. We have canned reports that are typically exactly what a bank likes to see in terms of, one click away from being able to download a 12-month trailing P&L for them to share with their bank, or download a PDF of their actual cash flow statement versus cash forecasting, which they can also have access to. So there's a lot of things that we give the dentist at their fingertips that they don't have to go ask the CPA for. Historically, okay, you're a dentist, you go to PNC or Bank of America, whoever, and you say, I want to refi my $400,000 or my $1 million, whatever it is. And the bank's going to immediately go, okay, we want to see cash reserves, we want to see P&L, we want to see trailing this, trailing that. And, the vast majority of what the bank requires, we give the dentist just right at their, right from when they log in, which is nice.
So what's on the future for Ceterus? What's on the horizon? Any cool new technology going on?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to add a lot of enhancements to the product. We're going to really focus more heavily on we're looking at, like I mentioned kind of earlier at the beginning of the podcast, we're looking at integrating with some other analytics companies that have built integrations into those practice management systems so that we can provide, daily updated metrics. It's so important. A lot of practices, they want to know, what was my revenue by dentists? What was my revenue by service provided, right? Did I make more doing crowns than I did cleaning last month? And so there's not a lot, because it's really hard because of the practice management systems being local and not cloud-based to the practice. But there are some firms that have kind of built that mousetrap, and we're really excited about integrating with one or several of them.
Okay, so now does it change the fact that, so I have Dentrix, it's just the regular Dentrix. I believe we have a server, and it's housed in house. How does that affect if my accountant gets Ceterus and my Dentrix is not cloud based? Does that change anything?
If the management system isn't cloud based, we slash the CPA firms as well are just reliant on the practice owner or the admin person sending those reports.
I see.
But then again, some of these analytics companies have been able to build a workaround to get into them if they're at all hosted, even if it's hosted like on a remote server. Sometimes these guys can build that back end, as we have in the past too. But our primary benefit is empowering the CPA to give the dentist what they need.
True.
And if that CPA can get it, if they can get access to that online, then it's amazing. And so some of these companies out there have built ways to do that, and that's who we're looking to partner with.
Okay, so would you recommend if I was a new dentist, open up a new office, to get a cloud-based practice management software?
100%, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Or one at least that integrates with one of the dashboarding companies that can pull that data out, daily. That can really show some important. Because the only reason we don't, show the dentist everything they could possibly want is because we can't get the information to do that, right? But if the CPA firm, if all of a sudden a dentist says, okay, now you can log in and look at my daily numbers and daily key performance indicators at the practice, then we're talking, and we can actually pull that data in and surface that for the dentist as well.
A couple final questions here. Can your software help the CPA and in turn help the dental office with preventing fraud or embezzlement, because we have a tighter watch on our numbers and our cash?
Yeah, we're always very careful to say fraud's going to happen, and we can't stop embezzlement. But what we can do is really provide the dentist with some pretty updated reporting so they can track things better. For example, we can provide our CPA firms with reconciliation reports. Not to get too accounting talk, but basically there's something called cash clearing, whereby if a dentist says, or the practice management system says, this dentist had $100,000 in cash this month get deposited, and then the bank reconciliation doesn't show 100,000, it might show 80,000 or 90,000. Well, there's a delta there, right? That 10 grand is, either was stolen or it's sitting in somebody's car that they just haven't taken to the bank yet.
Right.
So by surfacing those numbers to the CPA firms and being able to do that routinely on a monthly basis, you can at least not go 5 years. I mean, I've heard, as I'm sure you have, I've heard some crazy stories about embezzlement in dentists and even just medical practices in general. And we at least feel like what we're showing the end user provides that to them. We have a transaction list by vendor within our platform. And by that, I mean, the dentist can log in and see every vendor they paid that month and how much they paid them across all of their practices. And then we're able to call out if there's a huge variance. So if all of a sudden there's like a new LLC, because, I've heard stories of, somebody writing themselves a check to some, obscure LLC. Dentist doesn't know who it is. They don't care because it's a small amount. They're like, oh, $200 a month. Okay, whatever. And then the next thing you know, it's 10 years later and they've embezzled, thousands of dollars. So by at least surfacing every vendor to the end user, they can say, oh, I don't know who that is. Like, what is that vendor? What is this $200 for? And so the relationship between the CPA firm and the dentist becomes that much more powerful, so they can actually have visibility and that kind of stuff.
Any last words of wisdom or any nuggets you want to tell the dentists or the CPA firms out there?
Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for a dentist to get a CPA firm that does dentists. Like, like I mentioned, I'm sure, your friend CPA down the street that does accounting for, landscaping companies and restaurants, and I'm sure they're great at accounting, but I would just emphasize the importance of having a dental focused CPA firm as your CPA. It's just so important for all the reasons we discussed, here today.
Yeah, they help you stay out of trouble. All the tax savings. It's dentistry is such a specific type of business. All right, so again, this is Jonathan Martin. He's the VP Business Development of Ceterus, and on Deals for Dentists, if you introduce Ceterus to your CPA, they'll pay you $100. So mention Deals for Dentists and get $100. That's awesome. Yeah, so maybe let's be in touch in the next 6 months or year or so, and find out what else you have going on, any new technology, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, I'll join your podcast anytime. Just reach out.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Have a great week.
You too.
Take care.